What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and a couple of other tickers. I'm also going to give you guys a very important warning about the market for tomorrow. But let me just mention that I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total. And the offer ends tomorrow, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, for Tesla, on a bit of a downtrend right now. We ended up rejecting off our 200 EMA, failing to break past 234. Then we ended up dipping back down towards our 50 EMA. You guys can see it kind of rebounded a bit, only to kind of shuffle for about an hour and a half, only for this thing to start losing it at this 227 area. And that's what opened the doors for a bigger sell off all the way back down to 220. So right now, Tesla is still looking bearish. So is the overall market. So is SPY, ES, and many other tickers out there. But I want to provide you guys a warning about this, at least as we approach tomorrow. So just notes that tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, the last day of the month for trading. And I just want to make it very clear that we have the FOMC meeting. We have Jerome Powell giving a speech. So there's going to be some very, very wild volatility. So that's going to be very important. And then simultaneously, I wanted to talk about this. This is also going to be super important. We have big earnings coming out after the market closes today. We have AMD announcing earnings, which will affect the semiconductor industry. And then we also have Microsoft announcing its earnings after market close. It's going to have a big effect on tech. So if Microsoft ends up announcing its earnings, okay, and they end up doing very poorly, and the market gets, a very very negative reaction, we could see a very very weak open tomorrow for tech, especially the QQQ and the NQ and etc. So I want to make that very very clear that this is going to be very important. If Microsoft does very well and they end up exploding, the market could get a big bounce. So whatever we see from earnings from AMD and Microsoft will have a big effect on the way the market moves tomorrow. So expect some high volatility tomorrow. We'll see how things end up going. But my warning comes from this. So if you want to hold overnight, okay, you're going to have to hold through Microsoft's earnings. If they do poorly, you'll have to be prepared for more downside. If they don't do poorly, if they do very, very well, and we see a big bounce on Microsoft, this could actually help the overall market bounce too. So, like I said before, there is risk involved in holding overnight, whether it's a Tesla position or even the QQQ. It's your choice, guys. It could work out very well or it may not. It's your choice, whatever you want to do. I'm just here to give you guys a heads up about what the risks are. So, for Tesla, from a technical standpoint, we're holding this 220 zone right over here. If this breaks 219 to 220, we'll be dipping all the way down to 215. And we have resistance at 222. Breakdown, we could get very close to 225 again. Right now, it's shuffling, looking a little bit more bearish. It might actually dip a little bit more, so be careful, guys. There's a risk of downside. I think there's a risk of us coming all the way down to 215. Just look for confirmation, which would be a break of 219, and that would cause even more downside. But like I said before, we're looking bearish, making lower highs and lower lows. There's no sign of a bounce. Tesla's continuing to fall. For SPY, we called out this head and shoulders like structure in my morning video. We had a left shoulder here, a head, and then a right shoulder. And I said we might be coming down to fill this gap as soon as, at least by tomorrow, if not earlier. And today we did end up coming down to fill that gap all the way down to the 538 area, only to rebound. And now we're continuing to dip. So there is a risk of more downside looking at this chart. We're continuing to make lower highs and lower lows. And there's no sign of this thing truly trying to balance or do anything like that. So we'll see how things go. There is the risk of downside if we end up losing 537, and we have resistance around 542. So give this some time to see what kind of reaction we get. That's going to be pivotal for the way we end up moving. For ES, like I said in my earlier videos, we have this trend line. This is still acting as a resistance, and we could actually see that an ES rejected off this trend line again as we're respecting a downtrend. So we're making lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, and we're continuing to fall. So there's a risk of us dipping closer to the lower 5400s. We could continue to fall, and then we'll have to see how things end up going. I do see a risk of ES tipping, so you want to be very careful with these technicals. Same thing with SPX. SPX is actually trying to test its lows all over again. If we end up losing the 5400s, look out below. There's going to be even more downside. For Nvidia, we're continuing to fall. We actually came very close to about this 102 area. As of right now, we're looking relatively weak, so we're going to have to see if Nvidia could hold this support or not. The closer we get to 100, the tighter support's going to be, but just notes that we're just barely holding on. If we end up losing 102.5, I'll be looking for 100. If we hold above 105, we could try to rebound, but right now it's looking like it might reject and continue to dip, so it looks more bearish to me. For others out there like the QQQ, we dipped all the way down towards the 454 support area right over here. very, very close to 453. That's the support I had drawn out. It actually came just short of that. But you guys could see that it's still looking pretty weak. It's still showing quite a bit of weakness. So I'll adjust the support to tell you there's 454 is acting as an area of support. We still have the previous support as well, but we're still looking bearish. We could continue to fall. If the low breaks, we'll continue to fall to 452, if not 450. And there's still a risk of more downside for the QQQ. So I want to give you guys a warning about that. Still looking kind of weak. But this is not a surprise. I did mention this in my earlier video. To turn back up, you need to break past 460. We're not there yet, and we still favor the downside. Apple's in the same boats, trading sideways right here. We have a range between 220 and 216, but I do think that this could tip a little bit lower. Our 216 breaks will be looking for 214 and lower levels. So there is a risk of some downside on Apple. I just want to give you guys a warning about that. For others out there, we also have the IWM. The IWM is also kind of forming a head and shoulders like structure, but it's still holding 222. So unless we lose 220, this is still consolidating. It's still holding up better than the markets. So we'll see how this ends up going, at least moving forward. But look for some consolidation, see how things progress. And that's what I'm seeing for the time being. For Coinbase, we're dipping. We ended up losing support right over here. So I anticipate this gap to get filled. I do anticipate more downside. I think we're going to be easily dipping to 220. So look for more downside on Coin. Amazon failed to hold 182. We're continuing to fall. We have 180 as our last support, so we'll have to see if we could hold above this or even close above it. If not, this could even dip even more, so watch and see if we end up getting that move. We could be dipping all the way down to 178 if we lose 180 or close below it. For Meta has resistance all the way up here around 465. We also have support at 460. We have this gap still to fill. We haven't fully filled the gap to 454. There's still a risk of a rejection and potential downside on Meta. For Microsoft, we have kind of like a head and shoulders like structure. We could dip a little bit lower. If we end up losing support down here at 417, we'll be dipping even lower. So watch and see if we get a rejection. I'm going to be very, very patient with this nonetheless. But there is a risk of us dipping towards 415. For Google, we're trying to rebound. If we break past 172, we'll be looking for a push up to this imbalance towards 174. So I'll see if that ends up being the case or not. But just note that there is a downtrend on Google. So you want to be very, very careful when it comes to the way that this is moving. So that being said, guys, the market is still showing weakness. There is a risk of downside, at least from a technical standpoint, but it's also going to depend on Microsoft's earnings and AMD's earnings too. So with the big earnings coming out, you want to be very, very careful. You want to be very, very patient, and we'll have to see how things end up going. So with that being said, please be mindful of the fact that if you are going to hold anything overnight, there are risks involved, and the market's in a very, very critical place right now. We're just barely holding some key supports. Tesla is still looking pretty weak, so you want to be careful with it as well. There's a downtrend being respected right now. We were trying to rebound only to reject, so Tesla is kind of failing the test to get a big bounce so far. So just be very careful and be very, very mindful of this. All right, so with that being said, guys, be careful. You guys could do whatever you want to do. Just know there's going to be a big move overnight and also an even bigger move tomorrow, depending on the FOMC meeting. So it's going to be a huge day tomorrow. Get ready, guys. Do what you have to do. Prepare yourselves. And I'll see you guys very soon on the next one. Thank you for listening and peace out.